We're going to go on to the next one. This one is a continuation of the same lesson. And you can see that I've added information on the experiment for Gregor Mendel and how he used purebred plants in order to do a cross and look at what happens in the traits of those plants. So for this particular lesson, I used some pull tabs along the side to define the word purebred and trait for the students. And I used images as examples of what the parent plants would look like. I didn't want the parent plants to look like two different kinds of plants. I wanted them to appear the same. But the challenge was, I didn't want them to appear the same just like I had taken the image and scaled the short plant to be smaller and the tall plant to be larger. I wanted them to look a little different. So in order to do that, I used this tip or trick number 3. I flipped the object to give it a little bit different of an appearance. And that's your tip number 3. So let's look at how I did that. So once you have your object on a page, if you touch the object and go to the drop-down menu, you're going to go down about a little over halfway and you'll have flip as one of your options. You will have the opportunity to flip it left, right, or up and down, horizontally or vertically. When I flip it left, right, you'll see I am basically putting the flower back to the way it was before I changed it. And when you look at this appearance, it does look like the flowers are the exact same image, only this flower has been shortened. And I knew my students would pick up on that right away. So instead, I went to flip, I flipped it left, right, and I flipped it so I had the mirror image of that plant, and they looked a little bit different. A simple, easy change to the image to just make it look more realistic. You can also flip your image up and down. In this case, it certainly would not make sense, but you can flip your image up and down instead of spinning it all the way over. Like I said, this particular instance, it doesn't help the image at all. So that's your tip or trick number 3. Let's move on to the 4th one, again, using my example of Mendel's experiments in the F1 generation here. Then, when you make this cross between these two parent plants, I wanted the kids to think a little bit about what the result might be. Didn't want it to appear right away when we entered this page and give all my excitement away, steal my thunder. So tip or trick number 4 is to use that screen shade, which is this gray area here, to mask information that you perhaps don't want kids to see right away. That way they don't get all the information at the get-go. So I'm going to drop that out. So if I were teaching this lesson, we would talk about it. We would maybe make some guesses. I might pick up a pen. I might have kids tell me they're all going to be tall. I might have some say they're all going to be short. And I might have kids say some tall and some short. Once we've made our guesses, kids have voted, then we're going to reveal what it is. So I can reveal like this, or I can simply take the whole thing and reveal it all at once. All tall plants and no short ones in that first generation. So let's look at how I get that screen shade up. So if you look at the top menu bar, you'll notice that right here, looks like my arrow is shifted, right here is the screen shade. And I just hid my whole page from you. It works like a toggle. It's on or it's off. And while that's good, when you get to this page, there's nothing there. And in the last page, I had part of it. You can grab either the sides, the top, or the bottom to move your screen shade. So you can mask just part of your page, either side, or you can go both ways and just mask a small section and leave what's in there up to the excitement of the kids. Another thing that I use often with the screen shade is that I have my screen shade ready, and if I find people are not paying attention, or I find there's a distraction in the room, or maybe I want to do a time test, I can double tap my screen shade and blank out the whole page rather quickly. I know I can take it off completely either by pushing that button or by hitting the corner X button in the top of the screen shade. So that's your tip or trick number 4. Add some excitement to your lessons using the screen shade. So towards the end of my lesson, and we're missing a few slides just for the experience of this example, I kind of sum up all of Gregor Mendel's results and conclusions that he came to during this experiment. I have a great little picture of my flower that's been consistent throughout my lesson. I could pull out and talk about some of those conclusions and some of those things that he came in through while he was studying this. But I wanted a picture of Gregor Mendel to come back up, to add that visual for them. And when I grabbed that picture, when I took that picture, it had a white box around him. He was set on a white background, and it didn't look very realistic. And I'll give you an example in just a minute. So my tip or trick, number 5, is to make your lesson look a little bit more realistic, a little bit more polished and professional, by changing the transparency of an image just to make it look better. Now, this particular tip or trick sometimes is confused with 2 kinds of transparency that are available. So I'm going to help you to understand the difference between setting the picture transparency and the transparency that's available within the properties of an object. So I put a green box here to help you see the difference in what these things might look like. So here's my friend Gregor Mendel again. And when I take him over the top of the green box, which would be similar to maybe having a background on the page, you'll notice that white box that I mentioned. Gregor Mendel's picture had that, but he doesn't on my page with the purple background. So how did I change that? Well, if I go to the actual pictures drop-down menu, you'll notice there's something called Set Picture Transparency. And that's going to set an area of the picture as transparent. So if I touch that, you'll see that it says at the top, click the area of the picture that you want to be transparent. Now, it wouldn't make sense for Gregor Mendel to have any part of his face or even like his shirt be transparent. We want this outside area of Gregor Mendel to be transparent. So I'm just going to touch there, and it takes that out, and now he looks a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to set him back over here. Now you might have noticed when it was over the green that there was a little bit of his cheekbone that was taken out because it was the same color white. But usually, unless you've got a really dark colored background, you don't notice it so much when you set it up here. So we'll go back to that purple side, and you'll notice he doesn't look like he has a purple ear. Now the difference between setting the picture transparency and the properties of the picture is that if I take Gregor Mendel again, same image, put it over the green background, you can see that box there. If I go to the picture and to the drop-down menu and I go down to the properties of that image, it will pull open the sidebar over here. And I'm going to go up to the Object Transparency under Fill Effects. If I slide this bar over, you can see that Gregor Mendel is starting to fade away over here. Basically, he's not really going anywhere, but we're making the entire object just a little bit transparent. And when that entire object becomes transparent, the green behind it is starting to show through, and he looks a little green to me. So that's not the same kind of effect that I had when I just took out the background. We can make him very, very muted, or we can make it very solid by using this. There's 2 different uses for each of these tools. As you can see, this one kind of cuts out the image, makes it look a little more polished. This might be very nice if you wanted to use this image as kind of a muted, soft background to something that you were working on. And it has a very different effect. In this case, I wouldn't use him over something green because he tends to look a little sick. However, there is a lot of value to a shaded, almost historic look that you get when it's muted or not so bright. So I hope you've understood. There's a little bit of a difference between the setting the picture transparency and the properties transparency of an image. And that is your tip or trick number 5.